Hello and welcome back to the Consistory of the coelc YouTube channel. I'm your host for this video, Reverend Zabel of the St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church located in Dalby, Queensland, Australia. On this video, we're continuing our series through women in the church. Particularly, we're going through my book, The Role of Women Laity, or The Role of Female Laity in the Church. And in that book, I cover the topic of can women preach and teach, and in that section I go on a bit of a tangent, putting forth 5 common arguments put forth by the women's ordination crowd trying to argue for women's ordination, and this is my response to those arguments. So the 4th argument, which we're addressing in this video, is that what about Priscilla? Priscilla and Aquila. Isn't Priscilla a female pastor? Well, no. Priscilla and Aquila are actually laity. Priscilla and Aquila are not pastors. Aquila is not actually a pastor, he is a layperson. And I just want to point that out because sometimes people get confused and they think maybe Aquila is a woman. No, Aquila is a man. I know it sounds a bit weird because with the Greek, the A ending is normally used for the women, whereas the os ending is used for men, so it should probably be like Aquilos. But for whatever reason, Aquila is actually a man. However, the fact that it's always mentioned Priscilla and Aquila, the wife, then the husband, generally means that Priscilla is in the leading role. For example, in the book of Numbers, when Aaron and Miriam rebel against Moses, the text does not say Aaron and Miriam, it says Miriam and Aaron rebel against Moses. And then when God punishes them, he punishes Aaron and Miriam. And so that demonstrates that with the rebellion, Miriam was taking the lead, whereas when God gives them the punishment, he reverses the roles back to Aaron first, then Miriam, putting it back into the proper part of God's created order of male headship. So Miriam took the lead, and so in this same situation where you always see that's Priscilla and Aquila, even though Priscilla is the wife, she seems to be taking the lead. And so what happens in Scripture is that we hear about Apollos, who is a pastor, getting up and preaching, but when he's done, Priscilla and Aquila pull him aside and say, look, you only know about the teachings of John the Baptist, you're missing a whole big chunk of the Christian faith here, and they better explain to him the teachings of Jesus. And people say, see, women can be pastors. No. This text actually shows us that women can't be pastors, but what is the responsibility for women in the church? Priscilla does not get up and publicly preach. If women could be pastors, then Priscilla could have just got up as a pastor and taught the congregation herself. Instead, Apollos is the one who is the pastor, and he is the one who is called to teach his congregation. And so Priscilla pulls him aside and teaches him privately, so he's better informed, and then he can go and preach the congregation. This is actually also a thing not just on women teaching in the church, it also shows that laity can't preach and teach in the church. Because Aquila is a man, but he's a layman, and he also does not get up and teach the congregation. Instead, Aquila, with his wife, talked to Apollos privately. Apollos is the called and ordained minister of the congregation. He is the one who is called to preach and teach, and so he is the one who gets up and preaches and teaches. Priscilla and Aquila can preach and teach, but only in private settings. As Pastor Prebino writes in his paper, Women Pastors and the Distinction Between House and Church, he writes, the scriptures refer to prophetesses and to teaching by women when functioning in private situations, in other words, in non-church situations. What Priscilla did was not a proclamation in a church assembly, but was teaching in private. I've been your host, Reverend Zabel. Goodbye and God bless.